Chairman of the Committee on House Administration, Congressman Bryan Steil, thank you so much for joining us here on the National News Desk.
Thanks for coming in.
All right, so we're going to talk about, obviously, the hearing that took place this morning. ActBlue CEO Regina Wallace-Jones want to address kind of, the elephant in the room here. Pleading the fifth on every question that was given to her today amongst, obviously multiple, including yourself, lawmakers that were there. Just your response to her pleading the fifth throughout the entire hearing.
Disappointing and frustrating. She has a constitutional right to do that, but there are real questions that we need answers to. My concern going back to 2023 is that ActBlue doesn't have the fraud prevention policies in place that are needed. Now we've had lots of evidence, including ActBlue's own legal counsel, telling them that they misled or lied to Congress, that they don't have the fraud prevention program that is needed, and that we know individuals are utilizing the ActBlue platform to launder money into Democratic campaign operations around the country. Since its founding, roughly $20 billion has moved through ActBlue. I think it's time that we actually get the answers to the American people as to exactly what is taking place on that platform.
I want to circle back to the money here in just a second. Regina Wallace-Jones did post an op-ed in the Washington Post this morning. I want to read just part of it here. So she wrote, for more than 3 years, ActBlue has worked in good faith with the investigation by congressional Republicans, produced thousands of pages of materials, and answered dozens of questions. My question to you is, do you think ActBlue, keying in on those key words here, has acted in good faith as she wrote in that Washington Post op-ed?
Well, one of the questions is, in the letter she wrote back to me in 2023, was it truthful and honest? The New York Times reporting tells you that it was not, that they intentionally misled or lied to Congress. That's a crime. And so although they did provide some information to us, much of the information they provided actually raises more questions. In fact, one of the most concerning documents that we obtained is actually that ActBlue shows that they reduced their fraud standards leading into the 2024 election. That is wildly concerning. They clearly have lax attitude towards preventing fraud and illicit contributions from being funneled through their platform. Those are the questions that we were looking to have answers to today. She used her constitutional right to not answer those. We're going to use all the tools on our committee to get the answers because the American people deserve to know exactly what is taking place at ActBlue.
So in that New York Times article that was published earlier this year, they referenced Covington and Burling, ActBlue's then outside counsel, warning Wallace-Jones in early 2025 that she may have been giving misleading comments to your committee when we were talking about those fraud prevention tactics. That is what we're referring to in this 2023 letter, right? That's what they're exposing, and those are the answers, just to be clear, that you are trying to seek, including today from the ActBlue CEO, to take accountability for the reporting from the New York Times that has been out there, and also the congressional inquiries that you, amongst other lawmakers, have been sending.
Yeah, in the fall of 2023, I sent her a letter with 5 simple, straightforward questions about what fraud prevention protocols are in place at ActBlue. She responded to that letter, but we now know, according to her own attorneys, that response was misleading or, in fact, just completely deceptive. And so we're trying to get the answers about what was taking place at ActBlue. Why did the massive number of attorneys and compliance individuals all leave at roughly the same time? And what is actually being done to make sure that foreign donations are not entering the campaign system via ActBlue?
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about money here. ActBlue has said that potential foreign donations make up less than 1% of the total money raised on its platforms in 2024, raised around $4 billion. So if anybody does the math here, you're talking about 1%, that could be around $40 million. Do you believe that it's actually more than the $40 million?
Well, one of the questions that was asked of her today is how much fraud is acceptable? The answer, of course, is 0. No foreign funds should be entering U.S. campaigns via ActBlue or any other online giving platform. 0 is the standard. The concern is that if we believe, if that number is true, that it's roughly 1%, we should be very concerned that there's actually more that's not being detected. We don't have evidence of that. We have evidence that some foreign funds have entered the campaign system. We need to get ourselves to a standard where 0 illicit funds are coming in to politicians' re-election campaigns. That is, I think, a standard that should have broad bipartisan support. Frustratingly, we saw our Democratic colleagues today work to distract and deflect from the questions at hand.
Speaking of, there should be a zero tolerance policy. Is there also concern? There's a consequential election. Clearly, state primaries are happening as we speak. Multiple states just yesterday. Is there concern with the consequential election, the midterms that are coming up in November as well? So clearly past contributions, allegedly, being made from foreign donations, but also as we push to the midterms, overarchingly, there's a concern there.
Yeah, I'm of the belief that we need to dramatically update our campaign finance laws to the modern era. In many ways, these laws were written at a period of time when cash and checks were the norm. Now we have online fundraising platforms. The money has only increased. We've moved forward legislation in my committee, the Committee on House Administration, actually in a very bipartisan way, unanimously moving forward legislation to tighten the rules around campaign finance giving to make sure that we root out waste, fraud, and abuse, but in particular, foreign funds from entering into U.S. campaigns. I'm optimistic that we can actually see that passed in the House and signed into law before the election. The sooner, the better. There's a real need to wholesale update our campaign finance laws for the modern era.
And you're confident that could get passed possibly in the next few months?
Well, we don't see a lot of things pass here with full bipartisan support. And as we move forward, that legislative fix in our committee, we had a unanimous vote coming out of our committee. That tells you that anybody that looks at this knows that there's common sense reforms that need to be made to prevent foreign individuals from making donations via online fundraising platforms such as ActBlue that ultimately end up in politicians' campaigns.
So there's legs there. Clearly support their legs. I do just want to switch gears here quickly just to on Monday. So as we know, last month, the CEO of ActBlue, Regina Wallace-Jones, agreed to come in to testify before your committee. Then on Monday, just days ago, her attorneys requested that you issue a subpoena for her to actually come in. You then, kind of slamming it there down on the table, said, I saw it on X, issued that subpoena within 24 hours to her. Were you caught off guard that the attorneys had reached out and said, well, at first we agreed to come in, now we need a subpoena to be issued?
I was mostly disappointed because I was concerned that she would ultimately plead the fifth rather than answer the questions that we have. Originally, she agreed to come in voluntarily and then answer the questions that we were going to ask of her on the record, all of which are completely substantive and related to the accusations that exist about the behavior at ActBlue. On Monday, she made it clear that she was probably not going to come unless there was a subpoena forcing her to come. We issued that subpoena, and then as you saw play out today, she chose to take her constitutional right and not answer any of the questions that were presented to her.
Last thing I have for you is just yourself, Congressman James Comer, Congressman Jim Jordan. You've requested 5 members of ActBlue's board sit for transcribed interviews, produce a number of documents related to their involvement in ActBlue's response to these allegations of donor fraud. That letter was issued, I believe, early last week, about a 2-week window here for them to respond. Right. Is there a status update on that? Have you heard anything back? Are you confident by, I believe it was June 16th, you will hear back from these board members?
I think we'll hear back in the near future. I remain optimistic that people want to come forward and come clean with the American people about what is actually taking place at ActBlue. There's individuals that know what happened. They have not yet been willing to testify and answer those questions. I think the American people deserve to know the answer.
And more hearings, more subpoenas, possibly more documents or just letters pushing individuals to come forward will continue to be pushed out.
Yeah, I'm going to continue my investigation, use all the tools in the toolkit to get the answers from the American people.
Congressman Bryan Steil, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.